Ida asked the question, like, how do we, maintain balance? Well, that's actually the answer is, how do we in such a small space have so much space? You know what I mean? Rather than having a lot of clutter and a lot of things and all that. But the answer is a perfect segue into talking about Qigong, traditional Chinese medicine, because the answer is always balance. Balance is one of those principles that is empirically evident in nature. Like, we can see it everywhere. We can see that balance is always changing, balance is always moving. And when balance is disrupted, things kind of go haywire until it can be reestablished. Same thing in the human experience. But to answer your question, Ida, there's a balance of in and out. So anything coming into the house has to have a balance of things going out of the house. So if I'm constantly, buying new things, and I look at an ottoman, okay, if this ottoman comes in the house, like, what's going to exit eventually, because we only have so much space to work with. If there's an imbalance in that dynamic, like you said, we'll end up with so much stuff in our house that we can't move. Well, this is really working out in terms of analogy, because now we have disrupted the balance to the extent that it's hard to move around. Things aren't flowing quite as well in terms of traffic in the apartment. Neo's a big dog, so he's going to be banging into things, and it all gets disrupted. So actually, Ida, I think that's a great example of, how balance can actually be applied to absolutely everything. That's why it's a principle, because it's applicable to absolutely everything we do. Yeah, so thanks for the segue, Ida. I appreciate it. All right, so we're going to talk about Qigong today. This is a Qigong webinar, and like I told Bob, the most difficult thing for me in life probably is being able to stick to 45 minutes in anything that I'm discussing. So 10:02, we are on the clock. So I guess I should introduce myself, just in case anybody who's going to rewatch, they may not be familiar with Ernest. So my name is Ernest, and I am accompanied by my wife, Shayna. She's going to be demonstrating just a few Qigong movements just to kind of illustrate some of the things that we'll be discussing. So I will discuss a little bit about Qigong, but of course, Qigong is all about movement. So we got to have a little bit of that in addition. So yeah, my name is Ernest, and I work at Shenzhen. So you have probably seen me behind the desk. My primary responsibility at Shenzhen is to keep things moving smoothly. I actually view that as the definition of management. Management is the ability or the act or the process of keeping things flowing, the ebb and flow, very smooth. And because if it's not smooth, then, things are tumultuous and it can get more difficult and it's not as much fun. Ooh, chat. Balance again. Yeah. And that's actually going to be the theme. So it makes sense, but I am going to continue to go back to that word and kind of talk about maybe some aspects of balance that are not discussed as much. I don't know. So, yep, my name is Ernest. I'm studying acupuncture. I work at the clinic, and I have been practicing. I started in martial arts like right out of high school. It was like 1997, or that was still in high school, 1997, 1998. I didn't do very well at first. I didn't really like it. I felt like it was a little too aggressive for me. I was really learning about myself, but I wanted something to help deal with anger. I found myself in high school. I was just an angry kid, angry at myself, angry at my family, angry at being angry. It was a vicious cycle. So once upon a time in high school, I learned a little bit about, actually I didn't learn, they glossed right over. It was a world cultures class, and it was Eastern philosophy, and they talked about Buddhism and meditation for about 3 minutes. And so I knew if they're glossing over it, that it must actually be really important. So I launched an investigation on my own, and that led me to a Kung Fu class. At the beginning of every Kung Fu class, and this is actually quite common in Kung Fu, is traditional Chinese martial arts. So something that's very common in martial arts is to use Qigong as a warm-up. So that's actually where I began learning Qigong, but I really got dedicated to it when I started doing Tai Chi. So that was probably about 2009, 2010 is when I really was investigating and starting to create a daily practice out of Tai Chi and Qigong. So that's a good segue into, what is Qigong, give some examples, how does it look, and then also talk about how it looks at Shenshen. If somebody were to sign up for the Qigong one-on-one session, what is that? How does that look? Why would I even want to do such a thing? So we can cover all of those little things. So I don't usually use notes. This has like 5 words on it. I'm not a big note person. I don't really plan things in advance. I've always gone on the basic thesis that if I really know what I'm talking about, or at least I think I know, that's always nice, then I'll be able to discuss things and develop a discussion and an explanation to some extent. So hopefully that's what this ends up being. But the 5 W's is always a great way to start with everything. The who, what, when, where, why, and how of Qigong. So what is Qigong? Qigong is essentially, just like I mentioned at the beginning with that management, that smooth ebb and flow. It is the self-care practice of traditional Chinese medicine. Traditional Chinese medicine is almost a completely different way of looking at health, looking at the body than we see in the United States and other countries with Western medicine. So traditional Chinese medicine focuses on one thing primarily. Everything will come from that, and it is balance. Maintaining balance in a world where it can actually get quite difficult to feel comfortable balance and feel comfortable solidity in our own experience. Qigong is something that has been designed to help a person establish and maintain balance within themselves on their own. So it's something that is supposed to be more of a daily practice, something that we do either a little bit or a lot of it, or maybe even just touch on at some point each and every day. That's actually where Qigong and most things gain their momentum, is in the consistency of practice. So with consistency, typically will come a certain type of quality that will lead to a wide variety of benefits. So Qigong is an ancient movement system that combines breath, movement, and intention. And that is designed to help a person establish balance, maintain balance, and to kind of do it on their own. So in traditional Chinese medicine, Qigong can actually be a type of prescription. They will tell you to go home, do these movements, do them every day, maybe take some traditional Chinese herbs, and then come back in 2 or 3 weeks for a checkup. So that's kind of what Qigong is, and that's my approach to it as well. So of course, why would we want to do Qigong? Why would we want to do anything? Why is always important. I really like when Bob was talking about meditation, because it feels good. That's always a good place to start. So Qigong, ultimately, especially when you get your daily practice and you kind of start to remove a little bit of the learning, you can always be learning, but it doesn't feel like all of it is learning. And that's actually a great way that we offer Qigong, is because you don't really have to learn in Shenshen, you just follow me. So I can actually remove that learning you still learn, of course, but I'm kind of removing that as a potential stumbling block. There's no need to stumble over the learning process because of the way that it's delivered. So we would want to do Qigong, again, to establish that balance, but because balance is so relatable to longevity, I think most people, if asked the question, they do want to live a long life. They want to live a long, vibrant, healthy life and feel as good as possible, feel as well as possible. So that's very general. How that looks to people can be very different, but that's going to be a pretty consistent answer in the human experience, that we want to feel good for as long as possible. It's kind of a no-brainer. Qigong can help that happen. So by doing Qigong every day, or just as often as you can remember throughout the day, I can show ways where Qigong is really beneficial. When you're sitting at the computer, when you're doing something at work, maybe something physical, strenuous, you're going to prep yourself real quick before picking up a heavy box type of thing. So Qigong can have all kinds of wide-ranging applications. But the bottom line, the reason we want to do it is because it feels good, and it will help us continue to feel good throughout our entire life if we continue to do it. And then, of course, the learning is a lifetime thing. You know, it's a commitment to always learning, always growing, and always ultimately discovering new things about yourself. So Qigong is exceptional for all of those different things. And remember, it's using movement, breath, and intention. 3 basic ingredients to create so much benefit. So it's no wonder that it's considered a cornerstone or a pillar of traditional Chinese medicine. The implication with a pillar is that if you remove a pillar or if you remove a block, the whole structure crumbles. It's that important to what's going on. So that's kind of why Qigong is being offered at the clinic, because it is really important to the overall scope of wellness in the relationship to traditional Chinese medicine. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for hanging out. All right, so we're doing the 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, and how. That is a very, I don't know if it's generic, but it's just very common, and it really just kind of checks everything off as you go. So makes sense. Who is Qigong good for? Now, this is kind of a debatable theory to a certain extent, but Qigong is usually something you want to start with the intention after puberty. You really start to add a lot of the Qigong intention after a person is about like maybe 17, 18, 16, just depending on the person. The reason is in traditional Chinese medicine, Qi is still developing. Before that, you can learn the movements with the breath, but it doesn't start to involve some of the medicinal aspects until after that period. The period when Qi has been developed and the Sanjiao system, everything is starting to function and the maturity has occurred. So that would be very typical with the growth and maturation of the human body as well. We don't need to interfere too much when we're a child because our mind is relaxed, our body is relaxed, our energy is flowing, and it just continues to amaze me how at a certain age, children have impeccable posture. They just sit perfectly, you know, they fall and they just bounce right back up like instant. Well, some will start to cry. It just depends on what kind of reaction they're looking for out of the group around them, but they can just, they're quite buoyant, kids are. So, you know, they're still developing. They haven't created a lot of the psychological things that interrupt balance. So, you know, Qigong for under, you know, the adult age is really just learning the movements. You can learn the movements right away, and then you start to add some of those elements that can be considered medicinal or internal. You can start to add that a little bit later on. So that's who Qigong is good for. In terms of age, after the stage of adulthood, you can be any age. So if you are, you have to sit, you know, maybe you're in a wheelchair or maybe you're in an accident and so you're immobile for a little while, Qigong can be done sitting, Qigong can be done laying down, and even to a certain extent, there's a lot of evidence that Qigong can be done in your mind, that you can imagine it, and it will still have a physiological response. So your body will still have that relaxation response if you close your eyes and you imagine the Qigong movements. So all of that can have value. All right. All right, so when is Qigong good? Qigong for me is best right when we wake up in the morning. So as soon as I wake up, I like to go into some kind of Qigong movement. Give me 1 second. All right, that's the fun stuff about live webinars is I have a cat. And she's making just a little bit of noise. Give me just a second. Shane is helping. Okay. They're not always cute. I'm just going to say, like, I love them to death, but they are not always cute. And she's an old kitty. So, all right. So when do we do Qigong? One of my favorite ways to do Qigong is a part of a relaxation response throughout the day. As soon as Bob goes into his room at the clinic and there's nobody around, I will do some type of movement to help relax my body, to help focus myself, to help center myself, and to help establish a connection to the world and the moment around me. So I'll do that with movement. And that's two of the main, well, that's actually all three of the elements. I have intention, I have movement, and I have breath. I do that in my mind when there's a lot of people around, and that helps me stay. When things move around really quickly, I feel like I'm in the center of the storm and I'm kind of walking with it. I'm in that peaceful center of the storm as things move around me. So Qigong can really help me with things like that. Of course, I sought Kung Fu and it led to Qigong because I used to be really angry. So it's amazing for that. Have you ever heard, of course, people say, take a deep breath, before you punch this person in the face, maybe take a breath and see if it gives you an opportunity to reconsider. Add the movement and the intention with it, and you now have Qigong on the go. So there are also ways to look at Qigong in terms of raising energy and lowering energy, kind of bringing energy down, not really like taking it away, but kind of helping it settle, helping it calm, like sand in water. But there's also a way to get that sand moving in the water and kind of zipping around a little bit more. So in the morning, I get it zipping. And then when it's in the evening and things are winding down, I'll let it settle. So the movements can be the same, but the intention starts to change, and that completely alters the desired benefits of what you're doing specifically. All right, so that's when. And then where, of course, you can do it in a very small space. You can do it in the smallest space possible, which is just in your brain. So it's just a little speck of a electrical neural network happening. But then Qigong can be Tai Chi. And then you can have more space where you're putting it all together and you're kind of moving. You can add it to Bagua. Bagua is another Chinese martial art that moves in circles. So you can move in circles around in the room. You can move back and forth in the room. But you can also do Qigong in a very small space. So, Bob and Shayna and Lisa, well, Shayna has a bigger space. Donna has a kind of a smaller space. Ida has and that's perfect. You usually just need an arm's reach, which I currently don't have with this wall. But an arm's reach, then you can go up above your head. You can go on the side of your body comfortably. You can do Qigong. But then I also kind of gave the example where I was doing it at work. I don't need any space really just to do this. Just to do that breath in and breath out and the relaxation response. That works really good if somebody's getting on your nerves or somebody's complaining or, I don't know, maybe things aren't quite going the way that you would expect them to go. You can just do that relaxation Qigong response or action for the response. All right, so how do we do Qigong? And then we can start to get into just a couple other elements and then get into some movement and then open it up to some question and answer. And as far as I'm concerned, question and answer can go past my 45-minute deadline. So I've already given myself permission that if questions take me past 45 minutes, that's not my fault. But the presentation, I will stick to my timeline. All right, so how do we do Qigong? Qigong has three primary components. The first component is breath, and there are a lot of different breathing techniques for Qigong. But essentially, we're going to take the breath and combine it with the movement. And they kind of work in tandem throughout the entire Qigong. Sometimes we call them sets. Sometimes it could be just considered your Qigong practice. So when you're doing your Qigong practice, pretty much the entire time, even if you're doing it in your mind, you're imagining yourself moving, but you combine the inhale and the exhale with that movement. Sometimes there can be strategic tension. Sometimes there can be strategic relaxation. And we're going to give an example of that with Shayna. Sometimes there can be a strategic holding of the breath. Sometimes breath can be more rapid. Sometimes breath can be through the mouth, like you do a little through a straw exhale. And sometimes you breathe in and out entirely through the nose. So there's all kinds of different ways to interact with Qigong that can yield different results. But generally, and ideally, with all Qigong, especially the stuff that we do throughout the day, we want to breathe with the least amount of muscular tension to perform the breath. We want it to be smooth. We want it to feel good. We want it to be as effortless as possible, outside of specific techniques to yield specific results. But if we're just looking for relaxation response in general throughout the day, we can just do a smooth, easy, effortless breath that eventually will lengthen and deepen on its own, so that we just don't really have to manipulate that process too much. Just attention on it, and these things will start to occur. And intention with the attention, of course. So the intention is there as well. So we breathe and we do movements and we have some intention behind the movement, and that is Qigong. Eventually, you can combine more of the elements of traditional Chinese medicine. That would be really good for targeting specific things, like maybe you're experiencing a certain type of discomfort or a certain type of pain. Well, then we can start to initiate certain types of intention to help address that certain type of pain. It will still have all these basic principles of movement and balance and different types of breathing coordinated with movement. So Qigong is always going to include some sort of physical movement. Even if it's in your mind, you're imagining physical movement. So that's still there. Does that make sense? Okay. And then I will have that opportunity for question and answer. So if a question pops up and you don't have the opportunity to ask it, maybe write it down or put it in the chat and we can come back to it later if one exists. All right, so that's how we do Qigong. We'll combine some movement, we'll combine some breath, and then there's always this side note that there's a million different ways to look at the same thing. You know, barbecue and politics are very similar because nobody can agree and everybody thinks they're right. I can go in gardening groups, I can go in stamp collecting groups, and I can go in Qigong groups, and people are going to have different opinions. All I can do is present the way that I look at Qigong, and ultimately, of course, the way that I myself do it and the way that I myself attempt to embody it. All right, so those are some of the basic things about Qigong, some of the fundamental aspects to it. We can get into just a little bit of movement. So I'm going to use Shayna. So if you want to, if it works best for you, you can pin Shayna's video because it will be bigger. And all we're going to do is follow along. Like I said, if you've never done this before, we'll be doing it slow. You know, Tai Chi, Qigong, this stuff is usually at a snail's pace. You can quicken it up, of course. Intention and different desires can be a reason to quicken up the pace. But in the beginning, we can definitely go slow. There's no real wrong way to do it because we're not adding a bunch of medical intention. So it's all just going to be beneficial. It's not very contraindicative. We're not doing weird postures that our knees are going to get some stress and tension. So if you can stand, this is good for you. If you need to sit down, it's still good for you. If you need to lay down, meet me after class and we'll talk about how to do that. All right, so I'm going to kind of describe the structural integrity that is involved with Tai Chi and Qigong to help prevent injury. This is one of the reasons that it's not contraindicated physically. You know, there could be existing injuries and things, so there are maybe little caveats, and I could discuss those in Q&A maybe. But in general, if we maintain this structural integrity, these structural principles, we're not going to injure ourselves. And that's super important, of course, because we don't want to do something that's going to break our body. All right, so if you, Mike, you just joined, if you want, go ahead and pin Shayna's video so that you can see her. And then I'm going to talk Shayna through the movement. And that's going to be really similar to how it's offered in Shenzhen. So when you come into the clinic, we have the room cleared out and I talk you through some of the different movements and what do we do with our mind? What do we do with our breath? What do we do with our body? I cue it all as it occurs. Okay, so Shayna is going to create some structural integrity and we're going to start with the feet. So the feet are shoulder width. Typically you have feet together, you have feet at your hip, and you have feet at your shoulder, and then you have everything else. We're not going to do any of the everything else. We'll just, the farthest we typically will go is just maybe a couple inches beyond the shoulder. But today we'll start at shoulder width. And if we can, our toes are, at least in our mind, gonna go inward a little bit. They'll kind of angle slightly inward. And I mean slightly. It's not like in, there's a martial art called Wing Chun, and they actually go almost all the way into where the toes are facing each other as a part of the practice. So not quite that. All right, and then we're going to imagine, or at least put a little bit of weight also on the outside of our feet. Sometimes we have the tendency when we're standing to put the weight on the inside of the feet, and then the knees come together, and then we have a very tight V in the groin area. And of course, that's not balanced. Energy won't flow very well. And over time, that can lead to sickness, in which case body work and acupuncture can come to the rescue and help work that out. All right, so we have a little bit of weight on the outside of our feet, and we have just a little bit of bend in the knees. They're just not locked. That's the key. We don't ever want to have our knees locked when we do Qigong, because if you do that long enough, you cut off blood flow, similar to Qi flow, and you might pass out, and that's not good stuff. Now, in the groin area, we, to the best of our ability, want a little bit of curvature. We want a little bit of a U shape in the groin area. In martial arts and Qigong, we call it the kwa. So the kwa, we want to have a little bit of curvature, like a suspension bridge, because that can help support the weight of the upper body better than that V shape that tends to collapse. You'll notice that with bridges, they're not typically V shapes, unless it's just like a decoration. There's some U-type structure in there somewhere typically. All right, so our waist is relaxed, our hips are relaxed. The chest, as Bob points out often when he reminds me of my own posture, is kind of facing off to the horizon. It is not sticking out, but it's also not caving in. In our modern life, the tendency is to cave in. That's usually what happens. If you're at the gym, the tendency may be to have it sticking out a little bit too far, which creates a curvature in the spine that is going to disrupt the balance. It's not going to, you can get tight. It will create more tension than it does relaxation, and that's the opposite effect of what we're looking for. All right, so we got our feet, we got our legs, we got our hips, and our shoulders are relaxed. Our elbows are slightly behind us. The hands are relaxed. You can give them a little shake if you want to, just to make sure that you're there. All right, you're there. Shayna, you exist. And then the chin is slightly tucked, if not imaginatively tucked. That's how slight it is. And you can kind of imagine a string rising from the top of the head and everything going down like a skeleton that is at the doctor's office. And they have it hanging on a wire. So that is holding the structure, and everything else is kind of going downwards. This is creating a posture called Wuji, or no extreme. All right, so we're going to do a couple basic movements, and I'll cue Shayna through the movements. I'll cue you through the movements. I'll remind you about your breath, and we can go ahead and begin. Before we start, let's just take a moment to hug a little bit of silence in between the words. All right, so Shayna, we're going to do the Grand Tai Chi, which previously I would refer to as sinking the Qi, but it's up and over the body. All right, so beginning with your hands together like Shayna is doing. When we breathe in, our hands rise, our arms rise up over the head as we inhale. Palms come up, look up as you breathe in. And then as you breathe out, your head levels, your hands go down, and you're still exhaling over the body. All right, we're going to do this a few times. So we're going to breathe in. Our arms are going to rise ever so slowly, breathing in, looking up and gathering. And then as we exhale, we're going to do a little bit of a body scan. We're going to sense into our face as we breathe out, and our hands go over the body, the chest, the legs, and kind of go down into the floor. Imagine roots of energy going down into the earth as we exhale. All right. Now we're going to inhale, and we're going to gather, look up, expand, gather, gather, gather. And then as we exhale, we're going to imagine like a white light going down over the body. That white light is relaxing and calming and it's removing anything that you don't need in this moment into the earth, down into those roots. All right. Breathe in, smooth, gentle, filling with air. And then as we exhale, slow and relaxed, gentle, filling the body with energy down into the deepest roots of the earth, and the exhale completes. Let's do that one more time, Shana. Breathing in, grandiose, gathering up, and then that slow, powerful, deep breath into the legs, into the feet, feeling the floor, into the floor and into the earth. And then just take a second in silence to yourself. All right. I feel more relaxed just talking you through it. So that relaxation response is pretty much instant when we do this. Now, when you come into Shenshen, or if we do this online, one thing that we're going to really do, and then I'm going to illustrate this as we do our next little movement, but we want to engage our senses. So if you're in the clinic, I light a candle, I blow it out, so we have a little olfactory, we have a little aroma in the room. Sometimes, like Bob, when he came in, I gave him some tea. Sometimes we can have a little bit of mint, or you can, I don't like gum, so I just stick to like maybe some natural mint. If you like gum, maybe you can have that, but we want to kind of stimulate the olfactory senses. Green tea right before this movement, that really hits the spot, so that's really nice. And then visually, we're kind of, when we're breathing in, when we're expanding, we're populating more of our visual data. We're seeing more of the room. Our vision is expanding and noticing more about our environment. So we have our visual senses as well. And then, of course, in the clinic, you're watching me. So that's a great way to engage your visual sense, which is usually the easiest to engage anyway. But when we're in the clinic, you'll be watching me do the movements, and then that makes it really easy for you in terms of learning how to do it and then following along. So we have our vision, we have our olfactory senses or our sense of smell, we have a little bit of taste, even if it's at the beginning or even if it's at the end. And I like to have a little bit of music. If it's music without words, that's ideal. But if it's word, or if it's music that you just feel a nice little groove to, or it just kind of hits you just right, that's good too, because that's invoking a little bit of a feeling. It's helping you connect to the moment. And ultimately, it's a part of our cognition that just feels good. We love music for a reason. As far as I know, my dog and my cat have almost no response to music. Although I've seen on YouTube and stuff, some dogs that kind of, they seem like they're getting down with the beat. I don't know. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but if you haven't, go look it up because it's funny. All right, so we have our skin. A lot of times what I like to do for skin is a little bit of temperature. We can make the air warm, so we have temperature on our skin. Sometimes it's the clothing we have. If you've ever seen people do Tai Chi or do Qigong, they have silk. One of the reasons they have silk is because energy flows better through silk, and also because it feels nice on your skin. I mean, that is going to be better than wearing a paper bag or something like that. Like that's going to feel scratchy. So the tactile touch can be a part of everything else. So we have all of our senses. Did I miss one? No. Yeah, we have touch, we have smell, we have taste, we have sight, and sound, because typically I'll put on music. So we have something that we can listen to. In this example, I chose not to do music because if we upload it to YouTube, it's going to flag everything because I don't own the rights to anything. So rather than that, you can listen to the sounds of my words. And then that's all of your senses connected. One aspect of our sensory perception or our sensory experience is introspective. That's using our peripheral nervous system to feel our physical body. Like the reason I can feel my body is because of the peripheral nervous system. It connects to my brain, and it's connecting and sending signals and communicating, and it's telling me that I have a hand. And if I want, and if I practice, I can actually feel I have bones and I have different aspects to my physical body. Maybe even hearing your heartbeat, feeling your stomach and internal organs, and then maybe even eventually feeling that internal energy, whatever we want to call it, chi, prana, life essence, whatever. It can be felt, and that's through introspective, taking our attention and going into our body. So those are all going to be aspects of our Qigong. And then as we do this next set that I call concentric circles, this is actually one I made up, by the way. Grand Tai Chi is a part of Tai Chi, so I do not own the rights to that. This one I kind of made up because I have this thing for balance. It's a principle that I really enjoy. And this is one that can really help you establish firm, solid, and powerful balance throughout the day, or at the beginning or end, whenever you want to do it. Now, with that in mind, though, we're going to make sure that we're putting our mind on all of these different aspects of our senses. Maybe not at the same time, but let's just make sure that we're doing our best to give attention to the feeling of our body, the sound of my voice, the feeling of your breath. So that's what gets our attention when we do our Qigong. Because remember, attention and intention is one of the key ingredients. We have movement, we have breath, and we have some intention. Where is our mind, and did we put it there? Okay, so we're going to do concentric circles. I'm going to just tell you what we're doing before we do it together. So just watch Shayna, and then you'll kind of get an idea of what it is. And then that's the learning part of it. And then we'll cue it and we'll do it together. And then we'll talk about it a little bit if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Okay, so with concentric circles, we're going to do opposite types of breath, and we're going to hold our breath in the two opposite opportunities, at the top of our breath and at the bottom of our breath. I guess the other opportunity would be in the middle of your breath, but we're going to do it at the top and at the end. And maybe someday I'll invent the middle, because I just got that idea and I like it. All right, so we have our structural integrity, and you don't have to follow along just yet. Just kind of watch Shayna so you have an idea of what's going on. If we were at the clinic or if we were doing this online, I do give an example of what we're going to do, so it's not just like, what the hell is he doing right now? I don't get this. So Shayna, we're going to start in that ready position. And when we breathe in, the fingers come together, and we kind of bring the hands up. And we're inhaling at this point. So we're inhaling, and then the palms will face up. This inhale is slow, methodic, easy. She looks up, and then she stretches, stretching while holding the breath at the top. And then she's going to look forward, and there's going to be a rapid, strong, powerful exhale. If you need to, exhale through the mouth. Just really let it out. Eventually, we go on our tippy toes. We are in an apartment, so if you are, maybe apologize to your neighbors in advance, because you will slam down on your heels. It's actually really good for bone density. It's really good for your heart, because it's doing some pumping of the blood for you. So there's so many little benefits in terms of overall health that this practice can have. And then we're going to do just the opposite. So now she's going to do a more rapid inhale up and around the body, more rapid inhale, and then a slow, smooth, methodic body scan, exhale, down, down, down. And then she's going to hold her breath at the bottom, which is the opposite of what we did, which is why it's concentric, which is why it's balanced. And then she does this little reset where it's just a small little circle. She makes a small little circle around her hips, which is just a quick inhale and exhale. Now, the reason I added this is because typically that exhale at the bottom is uncomfortable. Most of the times when someone says take a deep breath and hold it, or hold your breath in general, they breathe in and then they hold it, which makes sense because now you have air and you can hold your breath a little bit longer as you slowly let it out. Most people don't hold their breath at the bottom, so it does feel a little bit uncomfortable at first, and this quick rotation at the end helps you to reset. And then we do it again. And according to my teacher, You only need to do this 108 times a day. I typically do it 7. Yeah. Don't tell him. I don't think he will watch this, but I don't think he would appreciate just 7 out of 108. I shortened things up a little bit. All right, so if you're ready, I'm ready, and if Shane is ready, we can begin. So this is called concentric circles, and our fingers come together, and we breathe in very slowly, very relaxed. Our palms come up, they rotate to face the ceiling, and we look up through our hands and stretch, holding your breath at the top. And when you're ready, look forward, always look forward, and rapid exhale down and let it out. Perfect. And then breathe in, the hands come up quick. And then very slowly, methodically, doing a body scan, we exhale down over the body, just like the Grand Tai Chi we did earlier, into the feet, into the roots of the earth, and then hold your breath for just a second or two at the bottom of the breath, and then do that reset. Breathe in and breathe out. Just very easy, very balanced. And we go again. Our fingers come together. Breathing in, feel like you're pulling energy up from the center of the earth through your body. And then when you stretch, you're extending, you're giving that energy back to the cosmos. And you're holding your breath at the top while you're stretching, creating space in the arms and in the lower back. And look forward. Rapid, strong, powerful exhale. Let it go. And then breathe in quickly, back up over the head. Slowly letting the energy fall down through your body, down over your chest, legs, into the earth, and hold your breath at the bottom for just a second and try to feel the ground, even though you're not touching it, that space in between, and then reset. All right, I'm going to do it again. Breathe in and the hands come together, pulling energy clean, fresh, and rejuvenating through the body, connecting to the heavens as we gaze up, holding our breath at the top and stretching. And when you're ready, look forward and rapidly exhale down. Breathe in, the hands come up quickly, and then slowly we're letting the light and the energy rain over the body, down into the earth. And at the end, feel that space between your hands, the palm of your hand and the ground. Feel the gravity in between, and then do a reset. Let's take a second and hug that silence. Just relax in your own body for a moment. Feel the sensations of your physical being. You are alive. In this moment, you can feel peace. All right. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes if they were closed. And then just take a second before you move. You don't have to go anywhere just yet. You are in a physical, energetic body at all times. And we can put our mind on that physicality. And sometimes if things don't feel good, we can learn ways to move and feel the flow of the energy in a way that can accompany sometimes things that are a little bit uncomfortable. And it kind of breaks it up, kind of starts to chip away at things little bit by little bit by little bit. All right, and then we can come back together. Meaning if you're sitting, you can go ahead and come back and sit down. Because if I'm not correct, it is almost exactly 10:45. And I have completed a webinar in exactly the time that I said that I would. Minus Q&A, because that doesn't count. If Ida just asks the most earth-shattering question and I need to go into a 3-hour Sermon of the Mount, then I got to do that. All right, so that's just an example of Qigong. What did we do? We did movement, we combined that with breath, and I helped guide you through the intention. Ultimately, one of the biggest goals that we could do, whether we're learning online or we learn in Chen, is we want to create a daily practice, or at least an often practice, at the very least an often practice, as often as we can. It can be done in 2 minutes. It could be done in 30 seconds. You could just do that a couple times before you jump on the bus. So there's a lot of opportunity to do this practice, and it doesn't have to be any one way. You can do it the way that you want to do it to get the results that you want to get and explore how you see fit. So that's one of the amazing things about Qigong. All right, and we had intention, we had breath, and we had movement. And hopefully it did for me just talking you through it, but hopefully that helped incite a little bit of that response, a little bit of that body sensation. And that can kind of give you a glimpse of what I mean by that introspective attention, the ability to, oh my God, I have a body, I exist, I am here. All right, I pushed it all the way to 10 or to 45 minutes and like 45 seconds. So I think that's a W as far as I'm concerned. All right, so question and answer. How did this make you feel? Do you have any questions about what I've presented so far? Yes, Donna, you even raised your, thumbs up. Does that mean you have a question or that you?
I had a question. I just
Okay.
don't have my glasses on, so I hit thumbs
Okay,
up instead of.
that's cool.
And you intuited it, so that's good too. My question is the concentric circles 7 times a day or 108, whichever we choose. Are they consecutive or do you spread them out throughout the day?
I think you could do both. So if you do it consecutively, you're going to get a deeper response, right? You're going to get more of a profound relaxation response because of the accumulative principle and the principle of momentum. So one snowflake was a second snowflake that became a roaring avalanche. The more that things gain continuity and momentum, the deeper and the more profound it feels, which is probably the recommendation for 108, is you do that for a week and you have reached unexcelled perfect enlightenment. But if you do it throughout the day, if you do it just maybe once or do it twice, you're still going to get a little bit of a relaxation response and it could still be very beneficial for you. So I recommend it actually in both settings. I recommend doing it maybe 7 times in the morning. If you forget that, then maybe just do it once or twice throughout the day. Ideally, we do it in the morning, we do it at night, and then throughout the day, we just do it intermittently. Maybe you're about to go into a big interview. Maybe you are doing something you've never done before. This is a great way to just check into the body, to do something other than think, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? What are people going to think? So it's a great way to redirect the mind's attention to a relaxation mechanism. So to answer your question, number one recommendation is as often as you can in terms of 7 through 108. I think that's irrelevant, just as much as you want to do. But we want to do it in the morning. We want to do it before we go to bed. And we want to do it just in little segments a few times throughout the day. If you can't do the beginning and the end of the day, just do it a couple times throughout the day. If you can't do that, try to do it a couple or a few times throughout the week. The more you do it, the better it feels. The better it feels, the more we're going to want to do it. The more that we want to do it, the more it starts to gain momentum and it starts to become a desirable thing. We're more likely to do something we desire than something that we think is just going to get us to something that someday we hope is something we desire.
I did try to do the tippy toe and fall onto my heels because because bone density is an issue for me. I'm 64 and I do have osteopenia diagnosis, so it's important to me. I'm a little wobbly up there at the top of my breath, holding it and standing on my tippy toes. So I have some strength to regain and balance to regain. Does it matter? Do you have any process that you recommend for that? Just as often as I can. I don't want to be wobbly through the whole thing. I try to come off my toes a little less high so the balance is better, and then work my way up as the balance. I know day to day, the balance can be different. So wobbly is okay.
Wobbly is okay. I mean, you're still doing it. Ideally, the more that you do it, the less wobbly it will get. And just like anything we practice, will get better. So, but you were right. If you don't go up as high on the heel, you'll be less wobbly, but also notice your timing. So when we do our stretch, you don't have to instantly go on your heels. You could wait until right about you're finished with your breath, then go on your heel. So you're only on your toes, and your heels are up off the ground. So you only have to be on your toes for a second, and then you come down, because that's where you get the real benefit. And then, well, the slamming down is the benefit, because like you mentioned, the bone density, and it also just feels like you're getting rid of stuff. Like you're just kind of like, I'm done with this, and I'm just going to let it out, and I'll feel better because I'm getting rid of some of those things that don't serve me. But also, in addition to, the length of the heel off the ground, you can keep that shorter. You can also, if you want to take it a little bit further, so it's the opposite end of your question, you can close your eyes. And when you are able to stand on your toes for the entire length, then start closing your eyes and see how much you wobble. And then that will also help with your overall physical balance. There is, I don't remember where it began, but there are a lot of physicians that say your ability to stand on one leg with your eyes closed is an indication of your overall health and well-being. Inner ear function, overall balance. It's a dead giveaway if you just instantly fall off. There was a lot of times where I would instantly fall off, but I just had to practice and stick with it. So it can be a progressive thing, and where you are is where you are. So if you're a little bit wobbly, all good. You won't always be wobbly the more that you do it.
I did also notice I was less wobbly if I didn't look up at my hands.
Yeah,
I worked my way up to looking up at my hands
good point.
and then
Yep.
putting my head forward. But if I was on my toes and looking up at my hands, if I tried all of that too fast, I was wobbly.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. One of the ways that I aim to deliver and offer Qigong is I don't ever want to offer something just so you can forget it. Everything that we do, that we learn, can be a part of that daily practice. And then once we have enough of our daily practice, all of the different movements, then we start to learn more about ourselves. That's when we start to learn more about the movements, and we start to take the movements deeper, or we start to add little things, little coiling elements or something that maybe wasn't there before. Like I said, I'll be 110 years old and I'll still be learning new things about my body, about my mind, about Qigong, about how I respond to things. So there's no getting there. There's no destination. I have immediate benefit, and I will continue to have benefits as long as I do it for the rest of my life. And of course you can too, if you do a Qigong practice. All right. Any other questions? You don't have to raise your hand. Yes, Ida.
Thinking that I was doing concentric circles, but I wasn't doing it the way that you and Shana were doing it. So what I was doing was the going up, hands down here, coming up and doing this, and put my head up and then just doing that. And I
Yeah.
thought that was it. I wasn't doing the
Oh, you weren't doing the other part.
or the slamming down of the heels. I wasn't
Mm.
doing that. So it was good to see that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it was always very good for taking the tension out of your neck and your shoulders.
Yes, absolutely.
So, I mean, it was doing something.
You were doing something, and that's better than not doing something. Heck yeah. But yeah, so now when you add the two together, you see how it has that balance, because one is rapid and then one is slow. One is open, one is closed. And of course, with Tai Chi, with traditional Chinese medicine, we have those opposites, the yin and the yang. That's always moving. That's not a static symbol. When people look at the yin yang symbol, that black and white symbol with the two dots, opposite dots inside of the colors, it looks like it's a static symbol, that it's not moving, but that's because it's on a piece of paper and not a hologram or something. It's actually moving. So they're moving into each other. They're constantly changing. Sometimes there's more yang, sometimes there's more yin. And there's always the unmanifested opposite. There's always that silence that's behind the sound, the yang that's behind the yin. They interplay. So it's not about opposites being opposites. It's about how do these opposites interplay with one another to achieve balance. Because when we have balance, we have stars. When we have balance, we have planets, atmospheres, oceans. When we have balance, we have atoms. When we have balance, we have physical matter. When we have balance, we have power. So that's one of the reasons that I put that particular set together. And I don't think I put too many sets together myself, to be honest. Most of the things, like when we do Superman, things like that, which is a different Qigong set, I credit who I get these from. And I tell them that I'm going to, that if I ever share this informally, I'll make sure to give you credit because you're the one who taught me. But then again, like concentric circles, if I put that together because I felt like it one day, then I make sure to note that as well. But that's the reason I did it, was to put the balancing together, the yin and the yang, the up and the down, the exhale, the hold at the top, the hold at the bottom, and then you just have a really nice balanced thing. So that's actually my favorite. If I can only do one thing in the day, I really prefer to do concentric circles because it feels the most balanced. I really like that balance. But good question, Ida, or good observation of how it was different. Any other questions? Or comments or concerns?
I wanted to know, in your explanation in the beginning, you mentioned where you incorporate Tai Chi movements at work.
Yes.
And you said when Bob is not around, I do this. So at least, I mean, I don't know if you were just doing that as a cover, so Bob would think that's what you do when he's not around, or whether it's actually, why do you wait till he's not around to do Tai Chi?
Well, one of the reasons I am a little tactful with other human beings. So sometimes the way that I interact with other people, I want it to be on par with their expectation to a certain extent. Otherwise, I get really weird eyes and people, they can think different things. And it's not, I'm at work. So I do need to represent Shen to a certain extent. And I don't want to be too earnest at all times, because that can be a little bit strange, I suppose. So when there are patients around, I'm not just going to be over here doing this and because it's a little disoriented, or it's incongruent with everything else that's currently happening in the clinic. But no, I am kind of just joking, because I'll do that in front of Bob. I know Bob doesn't care. I know that the other practitioners don't care. And to be perfectly honest, most of the clients and patients probably wouldn't care at all either. But just to be tactful with my fellow human beings. And then also I do something like lay on my flat back, and I don't want Bob to see that I'm laying down on the job. So I definitely wait for everybody to go away before I lay down on the ground and I start doing yin yoga behind the counter.
I was just joking also, but
I know,
thank
I
you.
just outed
And
myself. Thanks.
and I have one other thing to
Yes.
say. I take umbrage. You were talking about the space that you have. Some people have a large space. All you need is enough space for, or you could do it in the smallest space, which is in here.
Yes.
And I take this mindfulness class, and I have a lot of space here. So I take umbrage in you pointing and referring to my head as the smallest space that exists, because it's just not true.
I was thinking of it more in the terms of electrical signals in your brain. Yeah, and those are really tiny. The neural network, the neurons, that's all really tiny stuff.
A lot of space in between those.
There is a lot of space in
synapses.
between. All right, so you have a lot of air in your mind, a lot of space. We will forever refer to Donna as the airhead of the group, and that's a compliment. That, in the way that she just described it, is a desirable trait. All right. If there are no other questions, comments, or concerns, I appreciate you all hanging out with me. I'm going to make sure to post this to my YouTube, and I'll have to log out of my YouTube to log into the Shen YouTube and then upload it to the Shen YouTube, but this will be available. And then, as a reminder, of course, I do this online on Sundays, and it's about 45 minutes. Eventually, we don't have to talk about stuff as much. It's just, I'm going to give you a quick example of what we're doing. so that it's not super foreign, and then we do it together. So that's kind of how it works, whether it's in person or whether it's online, still super easy to follow along. And then it actually can build until you just really just don't need me around anymore, because you have all the components necessary for your own practice, and you're ready to kind of take that learning journey on your own, which is a really big part of the learning journey, is the what we learn informally, you know, after we've learned all of the nuts and the bolts and the curriculum, I guess you could say.
And the registration for that is on the Shenzhen site.
It
Oh,
is.
that's like a tongue twister.
It is a little bit. Yeah,
Shenzhen
the
site.
Shenzhen site.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's on Shenzhen site, and then you could just go to book online, and I'm only available on Sundays. And I think there's room for 3 different sessions. So not a ton of availability, but it is there. Yeah. All right. Yep. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, I think we're cool. So hopefully this was interesting or entertaining to some extent, and then hopefully you got a little bit of relaxation response out of it. But I really appreciate you hanging out with me and Shayna, and I hope we get the chance to hang out again, which with this group I know we will. So thanks so much. All right. Bye, everyone.
Ernest.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks,
Take
Ernest.
care.
Yep, have a happy rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks.